LBJ had that problem with Peter Hurd and that painting. Well, a couple of weeks after that, I sent some of my pictures up to him, and he sent one of them back and said, "Worst picture of me I've ever seen except one." and I sent a note back, "I'm still the best damn Japanese photographer you have on your staff." Well, to get with this right away, I want you to know that LBJ gave me this opportunity because he trusted me. We got along. I feel that I had to train him. I'll tell you a little bit about that when we get in the slides. But I was not trying to photograph him for current use. I decided he wanted me to take pictures of him with his visitors, because he gave them photographs, and to get a picture to my friend Bill from Lyndon B. Johnson was a pretty valuable thing. We had nice big 11 by 14s, and they were excellent print quality. He let me walk in on him at any time. There were only two people at the White House, Marvin Watson, the appointment secretary, and myself, who had permission to walk in on the President of the United States at any time. Well, once he let me do that, I figured out the responsibility would be to the historian of 500 years from now. Not the pictures for public relations, not the pictures just for him, but the pictures that I could get if they're honest. If you have important people discussing the important issues of the day that are going to influence the people of the world, and they are oblivious of the camera, and you can get an honest picture of a crucial moment, then I figured you're doing something. Lyndon Johnson made anywhere from 200 to 300 decisions a day. He had a stack of what we called his reading file when he went to bed at night that was from 200 to 300 pages. 100 to 200 pages, and each one was a decision. And on the bottom was yes, no, or see me. He never had a carryover. He made those decisions like this. And don't forget, the president doesn't get easy decisions. If it's a 45-55 decision, a cabinet member or even a staffer can make that one. He only got the 49-51 decisions, where 49% of the people or the advisors disagreed with it, or 51% of the people disagreed with it. So any president, when he makes decisions, is going to alienate the affections of a lot of people over a long period of time, because a lot of them don't agree with the decisions. So let's take a look at LBJ making a decision. Here it comes. Let's do it this way. After he made the decision, he had the problem of selling the decision. You just don't make the decision. You've got to get people to agree to it and explain why he did it. This was his big problem. Here is the press conference in his Oval Room. He actually liked the press. This is Arthur Sulzberger of the New York Times. Here he is in the barber shop. And he saw correspondence all the time, privately like this, and in small groups. He must have had an average of 2 appointments like this every evening. This is the way the day started. I had a buzzer installed in my office because the Secret Service have a buzzer system. Once he leaves the mansion, which is the main part of the White House, to come over to the West Wing, we got a buzz. And I would, this is part of my training of LBJ. I made a point to be in his office when he walked in the first thing in the morning, and I intentionally did not say good morning to him unless he said good morning to me. And after a while, then the purpose of that was that he wouldn't, he considered me as part of the furniture. After a while, he never saw me. Several times he had meetings. I would go into the cabinet room when the people were there before he arrived, and I take pictures because people behave differently before the president arrives and after he's in the room, and I found that interesting. And then he'd come in the room and I'd cover the whole bit, take pictures from both sides, and even take a 21 millimeter or 20 millimeter, 6 or 7 inches from the back of his head, and then I'd figure I'd shot my wad and go down to the office and get there and the buzzer would buzz and I'd dash back upstairs, and as I walked in with my cameras he'd say, "Why, now everybody comb their hair and look good because this fellow's going to take your picture." And everybody in the room, of course, had already seen me. Then he'd start his appointments. This is a typical appointment. I like this picture because this is the skeptic, Senator Bill Fulbright, as you all know. One of the marvelous things about American politics and politicians, I think, is that no matter how they vilify each other and what they say in public or disagree on policy, there's nothing personal to it. These two men are actually pretty good friends. And then we might have a state visitor. This is one of the more interesting things with the state visit. After the plenary session between the American side and the foreigners, these happen to be Germans during the Earhart visit, the Americans get on one side of the table. You see Secretary George Ball, McGeorge Bundy, Bob Comer, Bill Hanley. On our side, they're working on the communique. The world press and the world wants to know what they said in this meeting, but they have to agree to every word. The Germans are on this side working their side, and they dicker on the wording, and they have to come to final agreement, which sometimes takes hours before they release it to the press waiting outside. And the famous Tuesday luncheons, which more or less replaced the National Security Council, all the really serious foreign problems, particularly the Vietnam War. Here he is looking at targets being recommended by General Wheeler, who's holding the map. That's Secretary Rusk over there on the other side, Dick Helms, director of the CIA, and Clark Clifford on this side. And the president would always ask, how many civilians might we kill if we do this? And General Wheeler knew that he had to have some kind of a concrete estimate. And how many men are we going to lose ourselves? You don't know what a president goes through with decisions like that. Secretary Rusk and Clark Clifford. We might have a visitor like Foreign Minister Brown of England. And this is a typical LBJ pose. They went for a walk in the backyard of the White House, and this is LBJ's putting over a point. He did this to all of us. Sometimes he almost touched my nose with his when he was driving home a point. Might be bawling out. The George Meany at night, head of the AFL-CIO. This is my favorite picture of Lady Bird and the President. I like it because it's unobtrusive and you're not imposing yourself on that, and you can see it because it's shot through the doorway, and without any word you get a little moment of how they felt toward each other. This ran in Life, double truck. It's part of the presidency story. Was when Secretary McNamara had a broken foot, and they were having a discussion after a National Security Council meeting. See, the public, and I wish we could all get the public to realize that, you know how much I've been criticized for how much film I took, because the general public thinks that he was so vain, which he was, but they thought I was up there 6 feet from him taking pictures of him through all this. This is the type of thing we were trying to get. The relationship between Rusk and LBJ was very fine. The men respected each other very much. This was during an appointment swearing in of Secretary Trowbridge, Secretary of Commerce. The swearing in had taken place at out in the Rose Room, which is out that door to the right there. And then they had a receiving line, and one of his daughters, Trowbridge's daughters, got kind of bored with this receiving line and sat in the president's chair, and I got this picture. That officer in the middle there is Chuck Robb, who later married Linda Bird Johnson. This is one of the fine relationships at the White House. This was almost a father and son relationship. Unfortunately, it did deteriorate a bit after Bill left, but Bill is one of the brightest young men I've ever met. I think you should watch him because he's really got a future. It was fascinating for me to watch people, very bright people, thinking and working. This is Secretary Wirtz, who instead of doodling, picked up a piece of paper from the White House stationery and made paper airplanes all the time. He'd have 4 or 5 of these things when the meeting was over. And LBJ, watching him ponder decisions. Politicians are always whispering. It seems to be a habit of theirs. This, of course, is a horse whisper with President Kiesinger of Germany during his state visit. One of the busiest scheduled times we had in the White House was the preparation of the State of the Union message, where the President reports to the nation what he thinks has been accomplished and what should be done in the future. Everybody works on this. Cabinet members, all the departments, and it gets condensed and centralized at the White House and is finally given to one of the key writers for a first draft. This is Dick Goodwin. This is the look on his face as he watched the President read his first draft for the first time. This is the staff. They're in communication with the President and each other through the squawk box on the desk. That's McGeorge Bundy to the left, Doug Cater, Joe Califano there, and that's Jack Bellini in the middle. They're all working on the speech, drafting, redrafting, and it could go through as many as 18 drafts. The day, and it got franticer and franticer as the time for the speech arrived, and the final day the staff even walked in on his nap and woke him up and discussed how they had made the changes he asked for. And even when we went to his bathroom, they followed him there and they keep talking about it. But he could get relief from the pressure he could order the chopper that would land on the back lawn of the White House, and in 10 minutes we'd be on Air Force One and on our way to Texas, which was the only place that he really could relax. He was a changed man in Texas. Texas could be a beautiful place in the spring. He had a lovely ranch there. And he could get in his comfortable clothes and relax. This is a shot I took in Fredericksburg, which is nearby. This is Johnson country. These are Johnson people. You have to understand this when you think of Johnson. These are the people he was born and brought up with. And then we go off on a foreign trip. These were always the worst for us because none of us could get any sleep. If we were going east toward the Pacific, we'd do a full day's work at the White House, and we'd take off at 11 o'clock, having done a full day's work, starting at 8, go right through to 11, and then we'd get on the plane. Well, of course, he had a bed, and we'd all be sitting up. We'll arrive in Hawaii 11 hours later, and he'd be fresh as a daisy. We've gone through 24 hours, if not more, and we still have to go another day. And then if this goes on for 17 days, you photographers can understand what it's like to try to find and see pictures for 18 hours straight. To have the same subject, particularly at the White House, in the same setting, and consider yourself no good unless you get something different, and can put you right through the ceiling sometimes, and it sure did me. This is the first visit with then Prime Minister Key. First time they got face-to-face in Hawaii. Questioning General Westmoreland in, I've forgotten which island. It was one of those islands. Then we went, of course, as you know, to Vietnam to see the soldiers. Questioning Chu at a conference out in the Pacific. That was Guam. Then we went up to Canada, flew up to Canada, and he had a luncheon with Prime Minister Pearson. At this event, the Canadians forgot about two members of the party, our protocol officer and theirs, and there wasn't enough room at that dining room table, so they put a card table out in the backyard and let them eat out there. This is our... This is to the right there is Ambassador Jimmy Symington, whom we used to call the boy ambassador at the White House. He's now a congressman from Missouri, Stuart Symington's son. And the thrill and the responsibility of being the only other person in the room besides the translator at Glassboro when Kosygin and Johnson met eyeball to eyeball. But then this is the negotiating outside that room. You can see Rusk and McNamara. This is what negotiating looks like. On all our Pacific trips, we'd stop in California, and Chopper would bring Eisenhower up and for a breakfast briefing. That's Cy Vance on the left, and General Wheeler. And then the big decisions. This is my favorite decision picture. This was during Panama. You can see the tension there and the waiting for him to make the decision. This is my favorite portrait of Rusk. But he's a very human guy. He had dogs. This dog, one of the beagles had an accident, and he's just checking to see if it has worms. And you know, remember how he used to lock up during a strike? He'd lock up the management on one side of a table and labor on the other side of the table and lock them up. And he ordered that they be given nothing to eat except ham sandwiches and coffee. And here are big executives, and he locked them up until they got so exhausted, dickering and arguing about it. Then about 2 o'clock in the morning, he could go up, and you never heard such a valid argument as to why, for the good of the country, they had to settle this. You can see the strain on Joe Califano, who's been through it all. And this is the Situation Room, the nerve center of our foreign policy, where all the intelligence that is vital to the day comes into the White House. It's under Walt Rostow. This is an actual scene of answering a hotline message from the Russians in the White House. Before my time, a camera was never permitted in this room. Decision during the Detroit riots. I want you to look at this picture and try to imagine what it must have been like to be in this room. These men at this time did not know if the whole country was falling apart. They knew there was trouble in Detroit. There was trouble brewing in Philadelphia. J. Edgar Hoover, who's there in the back, would come up. He'd be on the telephone and said, "We expect trouble in Boston in 2 hours. We should have so many troops." Johnson is mobilizing troops and getting commanders, and Johnson knew General Johnson here to the right, he knew where all the planes were. I ended up with a lot of respect for him that night. This is about 2 o'clock in the morning. But he's very human. The love between him and the grandson, very proud of him. Great-grandfather. That child adores his grandfather. But still the decisions. Then the big one that he wasn't going to run. That's my last picture. Could I have the lights, please?